Inside the Birds is back. What's going on? Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan here. You know what else is back? Not just Inside the Birds, but Eagles football, NFL football. That's right. It's about to be back. This is now the regular season, Adam. We are in regular season podcast form. That means today's Monday. We'll have another pod Wednesday. And, of course, we'll start our Friday game preview pods. That'll be Friday. We'll preview the Eagles-Lions game coming up week one here, just right around the corner. And of course, we'll be back. We have some pretty big announcements that we're going to make. Most of them are going to come out by Wednesday later in the week, just finishing up some things on some wrapping up some loose ends. But we can say our pregame show will be back. We'll be back at Rivers Casino in Philadelphia, where we've been last year. Jack's Bar and Grill, I believe it's called. You, me, Greg Cosell, Jason Avant, and then occasionally we'll have some different guests. So just the thought of that, Adam, has got to excite you. We're back.
Can't wait. Yeah, and that, by the way, it's 3 hours before the game, so 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. We're the first one. It also repeats on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. It's phenomenal. And then we're working on to make sure we get it in pod form as quickly as we can, particularly for those people who are going, and if you're driving to the game, if you're in Detroit, because this game is on the road, but obviously when the Eagles are at home next Monday night against the Vikings. So we got a lot of stuff coming this week. Yeah, we, in the media business, seems like people don't want to do anything until there's a deadline. The deadline's week one, and we get it. It's been like that since we started the show with all our deals that we get. So we're glad to be back, and we got a big announcement coming on how you guys could all be included in something really, really interesting that came to us. We'll leave it at that. I can't give it any more out than that. But and it also will. You could also watch our pregame show in person, as you just said. Mm-hmm. We're going to VIP tickets available and be able to interact with us. Probably get on TV, ask a question. Boy, we'd love to get an audience where we'll give you the mic and you ask your question.
Yeah, that would be a great addition to the show when we get that going. Jason Avant's a big part of the show. He'll be part of the show again. He was just with us last week when we did our live podcast, live stream in Fishtown. Apologize to those for some of the technical difficulties, those who are watching at the end. We had 45 really good minutes, and then it got a little splotchy out there at the end, so we had to cut it short. But we had a really good time. Jason with some really strong, pointed comments about the Eagles, what he thinks of their offense, what he thinks of their defense, the Jalen Reagor trade. We went through it all. So Jason Avant bringing the knowledge, as he always does. That is also available to be watched on our YouTube platform along with our podcast. You can listen to it on our podcast platform as well. And look, it's week one, Adam, but like, as you can see, for those watching, and you can see me, Adam, I'm not ready to let go of summer just yet, man. Like I'm really hoping we get a nice mild September. As you can see, I'm wearing my like Hawaiian pink shirt with the palm trees on it, because I just had a really nice weekend down the shore for the last, Labor Day weekend. The water was crystal clear. It was warm. It was the water everybody wanted all summer and didn't get until now. But I'm just not ready to say goodbye. I can't do it.
Well, I was talking to John D. Filippo, our friend who's was the Bears coach, obviously here in Philly. Mm-hmm. He's in the Jacksonville area, and he said their falls are incredible.
Oh yeah.
And he was playing golf over this past weekend. And what he said was it was one of those rare days in Jacksonville in early September that it's not humid. Mm-hmm. And because it doesn't get any better than that when it's in the low to mid 80s and not humid. I mean, it just makes it perfect wherever you're living. So yeah, look, we're turning the page. It's week one. 3 days from now, we've got the first game of the season, the Thursday night game. This is unbelievable. Finally.
I'm excited for the game. I have not looked at a spread lately. Somebody told me that, I think a month and a half ago, it was like the Eagles were like 10-point favorites, and now it's way, way down. And there's a lot of, it's weird. There's a lot of seemingly positive momentum and energy about the Detroit Lions. And I think a lot of it came from Hard Knocks.
Exactly.
Which is kind of a weird way to like look at a team and think they're going to be better. I mean, because it's kind of sort of scripted to be a certain way, but I hope it's true. It would be nice to see the Lions actually be a decent team again.
Well, I mean, they're themselves. I mean, Deuce, no, they don't script what they say. They do whatever.
No, I just mean the way they put it together. Like, you can get some good
makes
vibes
it more dramatic. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, and that I'd agree with for sure. And Deuce Staley's like the star, but he's awesome. Aaron Glenn, of course, Dan Campbell, Mr. Kneecaps. It's cool. Look, they're more talented. We'll get into this in our Friday preview, but I could tell you they are when they played the Eagles last year, obviously the Eagles destroyed them and humiliated them. In fact, Dan Campbell has talked about that. But the talent level that they have from last year to now, it's just not quite what the Eagles have done, obviously. But they have a lot more talent, particularly at the wide receiver position. Their staff does a good job. They were very competitive last year. They just had trouble closing out games. A lot of bad luck.
Yeah.
That Ravens game, they got cheated. But the fact of the matter is they're going to be better. Now, it's another thing we'll probably talk about this either Friday or Wednesday when we give our season picks and all that for by division. I'm big on the over-under totals. I got to look at what the Lions is. I know the Eagles has moved. It moved from 9 to 9.5, depending on which book you're looking at. But the Cowboys are still, as we speak, Monday morning, though, it looks like they're bringing in Jason Peters, who eventually may start left tackle. I just don't understand what it's not a homer pick. But how do you look at the both teams and don't think the Eagles have the better chance to win the division? I mean, come on, really.
I can't hate it, man. Like I think they're good. I mean, they've had losses, but they still have Dak. They still have CeeDee Lamb. They still have Micah Parsons. So you can make an argument they have the best quarterback and pass rusher in the division. I think you could make a fair argument for that. So while I agree with you, the Eagles 53 might be better. A team's 1 through 10, top 10 might be better than the other teams 1 through 10, and that might matter more.
Yeah, the only thing, when you look at, I'm interested because Dallas, they typically like to spread you out when they're deep enough at a receiver, because they would do that to the Eagles. But now without Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, they don't. Sometime September they think he's going to play, but they don't have an exact timeline. They're going to be very young at receiver. CeeDee Lamb's an inside receiver. He's not an outside receiver, so that does affect them. Dalton Schultz got the Eagles last year. He's a good player.
Yep.
But remember, we've not had a repeat winner since 2004 in that division.
That's correct. That is correct. No, I would not argue with anybody that says the Eagles are the best team in the NFC East on paper, at least. But I also wouldn't argue with someone who said, no, I still think Dallas is going to win the division because they're superior at this position or this offensive coordinator or defensive, whatever you want to say. That's fine with me too. 4-point favorites, by the way, is what the Eagles are. And I'm pretty sure it was like double digits back in like May or June. So it's interesting that the Eagles roster has actually improved, gotten better. But yet the line has gotten closer to the Lions. I don't know what that means or what it says, but I think it's fascinating.
They were so competitive last year. They choked. They had leads, blew them, and they've upgraded the talent level. And I'm interested to see. Look, that Dave Phipps, the special teams coach, Nate Sudfeld just became their backup. They signed him after the Niners bailed on him. They owed him $2 million, but they walked away from Jimmy G's back with the Niners. What a crazy story!
Yeah.
But we got roster moves to talk about in a minute, but certainly it was an interesting week last week with roster moves, and the Eagles were right in the front of it.
Yes. Yeah, Nate Sudfeld's kind of becoming like the poor man's Chase Daniel, by the way. He doesn't make as much money, but he seems to get signed and then signed and then signed. So, like you said, now he's with the Detroit Lions. And yes, the Eagles have made a lot of roster moves, Adam. First of all, they've brought in some players. They've released some players. Then they've traded some. We're going to put a little tie or a bow tie on the Jalen Reagor trade. We have a little bit more intel after that. And then, of course, they've got some players who are banged up that we'll get into that too. And then just talk about, as they go into the season, any remaining issues or concerns or roster maneuvering that might go on. And then we'll get out of here and be back Wednesday morning, as again, we start 3 pods a week now from now until I guess the Super Bowl. So before we get into that, let's tell you about our friends that we've been talking to you about. Freestone Farms CBD, our favorite CBD brand, because they farm it themselves with all organic inputs, and they offer you some education on what they grow and how they grow it to make the best quality products on the market. We tried a lot of different brands, but Freestone Farms' CBD has been the best. We love it after workouts. It helps us with that post-workout malaise, and then we love it before bed because it helps us both sleep better at night. And what's really exciting is this whole new strain menu we've been telling you about. You'll get great CBD at prices you will love. So go to freestonefarmcbd.com. You'll find it there. Part of the menu we've talked about is the insane tropical tasting Bayox. It clocks in at a chart topping 24.1%. There's the super CBD. It's a half Hindu Kush at 21%. The genetics these guys are using don't get any better. They grow all their premium hemp flower in the Garden State with all organic inputs and IPM, nothing synthetic from farm to jar. After harvest, they carefully preserve all the plant compounds with a perfect 3-month cure. All you got to do is take one look or one smell, and you'll know it's CBD done right, and that it's a product that's great for those who like to put natural things, a natural approach to what they put in their bodies. So if you use the promo code ITB, you'll get 20% off at checkout. That's promo code ITB at checkout to get 20% off on freestonefarmscbd.com. All right, Adam, let's talk about the sort of the two big moves. We'll start off with the quarterback that they claim off waivers from, I believe it was from the New Orleans Saints, Ian Book,
yep.
the former Notre Dame quarterback. We talked about this last week when we were wondering if they were going to release or waive both Carson Strong and Reed Sinnett and then just find a totally different quarterback. And they kind of did both. They brought Sinnett back to the practice squad and still brought in a new quarterback in Ian Book. And, you know, before you get intel on that, I'm going to read, and Jason Avant backed us up on this. It's very odd to have 4 quarterbacks on your overall team, your team and practice squad, because of the way practice is and how many reps quarterbacks get. The Eagles have done this before. I mean, even recently, I think last year at one point they had 4 for at least a stretch of the season. But I just don't know. I'd love to know what happens with the quote unquote 4th guy, whether it's Book or whether it's Sinnett. Like, what do they do at practice? How much better can you get on so few reps?
Well, I think it's more they're thinking long term, not short term. So Ian Book, they claimed him off waivers. He has 3 years left, this year and 2 years. Gardner Minshew's done after this season. His contract's up.
Right.
They don't have the only quarterback would be under contract would be Hurts, and he may not even be the starter next year. So they see Book potentially being the number 2 next year. They want to go through it. That's a little bit forward thinking.
Yeah.
The Saints largely overdraft him. He should never have gone anywhere close to the 4th round. The grades we got from other teams were 5 through 7. They reached for him in the 4th. It didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
He got thrown to a game last year when he wasn't ready. It wasn't really fair. You could throw that tape out. It means absolutely nothing. He was thrown in because Winston was out. A bunch of quarterbacks were not available, and they just went with him on short notice. It just didn't work. But he's a shorter guy, not a great arm, okay arm, athletic, really, really smart, super high character. He'll be competitive for the quarterback room. That is important to coaches. I can tell you that. He gives you help with the look team because he's athletic. He gives you just a different look if you need him to. The way it's explained to us, ideally, he's an NFL 3rd quarterback who's upside to be a 2 down the line. So that's kind of it. And as you said, he'll be the 3rd string quarterback. You wouldn't think he would dress.
I just don't know what he's showing. Like for an organization that wants a number 2 quarterback, that's like a low 1, 2. They want their number 2s to be guys who can step in and start like a Gardner Minshew, a high end number 2. They drafted Jalen Hurts at the time to give themselves a high end number 2, and I think it would have to be projection at this point.
Oh,
and
yeah.
A lot of development to say Ian Book is going to be a high-end number 2.
Well, no, I wouldn't call him a potential high-end number 2, but he's got the potential to be a 2. He's a 3. The league saw him as a 3. That's why it was shocking when he was drafted in the 4th.
Right.
He got a lot, like, when he went in the 4th last year, that's not where anyone I spoke to thought he'd go. But not everyone knows everybody's great. It only takes one team out of 32 to draft a guy higher than he should have been. And it didn't work, and they moved on. His ceiling is to be a 2. How high that would be, no one has any idea because he hasn't really been developed yet.
Right.
But again, they're taking this guy with no fully guaranteed money off waivers.
Sure.
They know the player really, really well. They've got scouting reports. They've got all sorts of grades on him. They know this player inside out. They feel really comfortable with him. But I think you're right, though. He's got to show me that he could be a 2. I'm not convinced because there's nothing special about him.
Right.
Other than he's smart, but it doesn't mean he's a good quarterback. He's got to be able to. There's a difference between being smart be able to process. He's got to be able to process, which the word we've heard is he actually processes really well. But arm strength, sort of a very average size, but he can move. There's definitely some things they like here in his profile. But you're right, Minshew's a way better backup quarterback.
It'll be a pretty fascinating conversation if Jalen Hurts winds up being the quarterback for the future and he signs, say, an extension this offseason. Do they then use the draft, because they have a bunch of picks now? They have an extra second rounder, they have an extra first round. Do they use a high draft pick on a number 2 quarterback the same way they did Jalen Hurts? And anybody who loves Jalen Hurts and said that, Carson Wentz should have been mature enough to handle it, cannot complain if the Eagles do that and draft a quarterback in the second round, even if they sign Jalen Hurts to a long-term contract, because again, that's, you can't support it one minute and then say it's a bad idea the next.
Well, that one was a very unique situation. It was, as you know, they kept it a secret. You're the note. What was it again?
Their whole separate Teams channel or Zoom channel between the 4 pillars of the franchise that cut off everybody else in the war room when that draft pick, when that the first 2 days of that draft. So
they knew
it was a little bit of a rogue draft that stands to look very, very bad now if Jalen Hurts is not the franchise quarterback. If he's not on the team next year, that means Jalen Reagor, Jalen Hurts, and you've already seen Davion Taylor. Jalen Reagor's already been traded. Davion Taylor is now on the practice squad. Kavon Wallace is probably hanging on by a thread here. That's the first 4 picks. That would be really bad. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, Hurts was not drafted to be the starter, even compete for it.
Right.
9 months after they extended Wentz's contract, and they drafted Hurts. It was have to be in our 5 years of doing this show. If it's not the biggest surprise, it had to be top 3. I'm not. I mean, wow. That one to me was one of those made my hair stand up. I'm like, they did what?
Right. And remember, this comes like exactly a year after they take JJ Arcega-Whiteside in the second round, which was sort of a surprise to us. And then, we've reported what we heard about how that pick was made with influence there from the owner. So that was, so 2019, Andre Dillard's with the team, first round pick, but he's barely ever started. And now he's injured. We'll get into that. And then he's a backup left tackle. And then Miles Sanders does not look like he's going to be on the team past this year. Arcega-Whiteside's already gone. And who was the third round pick that year? Did they not have one? I have to remember. But either way, 19 and 20, man. Listen, Howie has done a wonderful job.
That's 2 years
of making this roster competitive and very good. But as people have fairly pointed out, he's had to do it to compensate for his own mistakes, and had to pay a lot of players like AJ Brown, for example, after they and give up draft compensation to make up for those mistakes. So
here's your this is, since you brought up, it's actually we'll do this quickly, but it's interesting. So they only had 5 and 19.
That's right.
And they only had 5 and 18. Holy smokes, how does that happen? That's not good when you do that. But now this year's they did it again this past season, but you could understand why, because of the Jordan Davis trade cut into that. But Wallace is obviously not. He's barely hanging on. As you said, Jack Driscoll's a mild hit. He's on the roster. He's shown to be a good backup. You'd like to. There's no room for him to be a starter. All the spots are taken up, but it's a mild hit. Hightower's a miss. He's still out there, by the way. Sean Bradley. They knew when they drafted him he'd only play in special teams. He's been exactly what they thought. He would be.
He's not a hit or a miss. He's just what they expected. Right.
Watkins hit. That's a hit.
Yeah, that's a hit. Yeah.
Prince Tego Wanago, he was with Kansas City. Now, this last pick was a miss.
Wait, can I just tell you? Yeah. I remember one guy. He flooded my inbox with how great of a player Prince Tego Wanago was going to be, and that you and I weren't giving this guy enough credit because he allowed 0 sacks in his last year at Auburn. I mean, the guy was completely ignoring the fact that I think Prince Tego Wanago at that point had a rod in his leg.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
Yep. Well, we were just completely dismissing this guy's amazing talent, and that just stands out when you said Prince Tego Wanago.
But the one they missed on, well, I say miss, he's still with Washington, is Casey Toohill. They thought he was too tall, angular, not strong enough, but you know what? He's been good enough. I understand he doesn't play a whole lot, but at least he's still been on Washington's roster for the third straight year. But yeah, 20 terrible, 19. Well, Dillard's a miss. It's just a matter of, okay, do they get him? Do they trade him at the trade deadline of the key? But that's a miss, obviously. But they got it with Jordan Mailata, home run. Miles Sanders is a hit, a mild hit. Now, if he doesn't get a second contract, we could always define that. Arthega Whiteside was a total miss. That's a bust because he's a second rounder. You call him a bust. Sharif Miller never made it.
Oh, Sharif Miller, God, that was a really bad pick.
That was a height, weight, speed, mature. He had some maturity issues, and then Clayton Thorson was a total miss. I remember when Peterson said I remember Doug said, "Well, he didn't want to come back here. We wanted him back, but he went to Dallas." Well, Clayton, you screwed up.
Yeah.
He screwed up.
Listen, so. I get where people say, "Hey, look, everybody's got good vibes right now." So when you're feeling good about things, you tend to excuse things more, right? So everybody's like, Howie's done a great job of overcoming his mistakes, sure, but like those weren't his first two drafts. I mean, it was not his first two. The things that they did those 2 years are still mind-boggling to me. I mean, they acted like a bunch of rookies out there, first time drafting, and instead of like the veteran GM that he was, and then the staff around him. Like we said, some of the things should have never happened, and they did. It's over with. Fine, they've made it up, but it's just sort of weird. This is a totally different team than you would have envisioned 4 years ago when they signed, or 3 years ago when they signed Carson to that long-term deal, and they were trying to build around him with those pieces that all just went kaput. So,
well, they're one of the youngest teams now. All of a sudden, the National Football League from being one of the oldest. And they've built such a good young core of players after the disasters in 19 and 20 that yes, they had to trade for AJ Brown because of the missing two receivers. They had to draft Devontae Smith. I'd say had to. I know they went with their board. He was the highest graded player, so they traded up to get him.
Right.
But you do wonder if they would have gotten it right on both receivers.
Right. Then you maybe could have tried to get Surtain there instead of Smith.
Sure,
or, put him another spot. Yes, absolutely.
No doubt. Yeah.
Totally.
So look, we have to be fair about it, but they're stuck to the process the last 2 years. The last year's draft so far, the early returns are outstanding. In fact, Chewy Pelutu made it. Tron Jackson's in the rotation. Jacoby Stevens was never going to make it. That was just something they want to convert him. Right. Safety linebacker didn't work.
Right.
In fact, he's not even on the practice squad.
Wow, that's right. He's not. Okay.
Yeah. Patrick Johnson made it. McPherson's the third outside corner. We'll talk about him later. Milton Williams he's on his way. Jefferson looks like he's going to be a stud, and Devontae's a stud. And the early returns on the 5 picks, Calcaterra made it. Kyron Johnson made it. Will be on specials. Jacoby Dean. It could be now for the middle linebacker or inside linebacker job because they're 34 front, but he's going to be a player. And Juergens is way ahead of schedule. A little bit surprised by that, but great story so far. And Jordan Davis has had his ups and downs in training camp, but it was expected. He was kind of raw.
Yeah.
But everything, as you said, the last 2 years, they're on schedule. They look good. And the reason is, guys and gals, they're sticking to their board. They're not reaching for in 2019. They were drafting the left tackle, the best left tackle they can get to replace Jason Peters. They were doing that. So when you have an agenda that you're doing this, you start ignoring other stuff. Rager, it was about speed. They drafted speed over talent over Jefferson and Ayuk. And there were guys in that room then that like Jefferson and Ayuk, but they went with the coaches, and GM went with the speed. He overdrafted speed. It didn't work. And safety, we knew then that Jim Schwartz wanted certain players. He wanted a linebacker, safety. He got it. It didn't work with Taylor and Wallace. And I think that's, as we move on here, it's very clear to me that the process has been streamlined. They're drafting the right guys on the board. And the only one that we know, it's been very public, the Milton Williams one was against what Tom Donahoe wanted, but guess what? The GM was right.
Yeah, yeah. Who did the GM want? Did he want the Lee McNeil? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he a pretty decent player too, though? I mean, he's
good.
A good
Yeah,
too,
you're
right?
gonna see. Oh, you're gonna see him on. He's good. Now Milton Williams is kind of different. He's more of a hybrid.
Right.
And tackle, but Milton Williams. Boy, I remember Cosell just raving about his tape last season when he would be on our pregame show.
Yes.
And when we would talk to Greg. So yeah, look, it's looks good, and this is the most complete roster. Would you agree? The most complete roster since 17?
Yeah. Yes. Since 18. I thought the 18 roster was better than the 17. It just had too many injuries, especially all of them that one spot. Corner, They had injuries at wide receiver, I think, at that time that was really bad. So they couldn't over. And then of course, Carson was hurt. He broke his back right that year. So they just had too many injuries that year.
Yeah, no doubt.
But by the way, to your point on how everything has been great and streamlined, now they've got an entirely new scouting and front, almost entirely new front office and personnel. So we'll have to hope that the process remains the same, even with all the new.
Julian Lurie, we haven't really talked about him, his inclusion in all this. Well,
yeah,
as we said when this all went down, you got to give it time. You got to give it a couple years to see if they're doing it. Is it all analytics? Is it? There's really nothing to suggest that this was an analytics draft. Though Jordan Davis clearly hit a lot of parameters, but Cam Jurgens was just, they were going to replace Kelsey. Kelsey was involved in that pick. Dean was just fell in their lap. Kyron Johnson had some good things, and Calcaterra was a pretty good athlete. But I'm not going to say this is, you can't really tell how much Julian Lurie had anything to do with this.
True. Let's go. Unless you had more intel on Ian Book, we can talk about the other player.
I mean, what we kind of broke this down. It's just, we'll see. Well, it's kind of a wait and see. They clearly have a lot of intel. They've liked this player. The thing that we learn about this player is the Eagles like him probably a lot better than the other people around the league we talked about about him.
The connections there. Obviously, his coach at Notre Dame, his position coach was Tommy Rees, who was with Nick Sirianni in San Diego, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So there was a lot of discussion there that helped. A lot of he likes his leadership. He likes he just and apparently Ian Book's a great kid. That's great. He does have
throw.
That's what I'm saying. He's got the ability to run around a lot. So you could theoretically play him in the same offense that you're using with Jalen Hurts. The one advantage I noticed is that when you're preparing with a practice squad, so week 1 you've got Jared Goff, who is not very mobile. I mean, he can move around a little bit, but he's not going to run around. So you could see if maybe Sinnett ran the scout team more for week 1 and week 2 when Kirk Cousins you have to face. But then when you have to face a quarterback who can move around a little bit, then you could see where Ian Book would hop in there and maybe run more scout team reps that week as they try to prepare for one.
It's funny. It's so funny you mentioned this because if you look at drop back passer 1, week 2, Cousins drop back, Wentz drop back. Though, by the way, he looks really good at healthy. Like athletically, he looked really good when I was there to watch him practice. He looks like he's all the way back. The kid, the Jags quarterback is Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he can move. He's athletic, but he can drop back. But then week 5 at the Cardinals and Kyler the compiler, Kyler Murray, moving around. Yeah, that's what John Hansen calls him. I love that name. He puts up numbers, man. Then Dak. Yeah, I love this. That's right. Ian Book. So he'll have some value. This is everything's strategic when you're claiming you're not just doing it for the hell of it. You've done your homework on the player, and we'll see if it works out.
All right. Well, speaking of, that's a good segue. See if it works out. The Eagles claimed Trey Sermon off waivers from the 49ers, which I thought was interesting. I mean, we've talked about them needing a big back, and then they went and signed LaMichael Pirine to the practice squad, and they already have Kennedy Brooks on the practice squad, and they already had Miles Sanders and Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell. They have 6 running backs among their 60 something. That's almost 10% of the team is running backs. That one, this is also a little bit mind-boggling for me. For a team that only uses 2 at a time, right, in any given game, to have 6 is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I would think we'll get in a Sermon scouting report. We have a very good one, exactly what happened to him with the Niners. But we said 2 things to start training camp. They're going to add a back with size before the season started, and they're going to add a safety before the season started. We had no idea who there was going to be, but they've done both. But the Sermon one is so interesting because I understand he didn't do well at all with the Niners. You could say what you want, and we'll get into what you've heard on sort of grades and so forth.
Yeah,
the guy was a 3rd round pick, whether they reached or not, or where they should have been. This guy was a Senior Bowl guy, really good final year at Ohio State. He was also, they thought, talking to them, Niners, about him last summer in particular, and this summer when I was there and recent weeks, they really thought he'd be their starter last season. And Elijah Mitchell took the job. for many reasons. But to sum it up, it's not like Sermon's a stiff. Guy's talented. He didn't look good. Now,
Right.
it's only been 1 year.
Right.
And by the way, they had heard his contract. There's no fully guaranteed money left. It's all his guarantees came in a signing bonus. So, you're going to take a look at him. So what do you know about Sermon?
Well, I know that I was told that the Eagles did like him coming out of college, that they had a 3 to 4 on him. Most people either had a 3 or a 4, so they gave him kind of late 3, early 4 grade, which is where he went. And I would say the feedback I've gotten from a couple of personnel sources is the same as what you just said, is that he's a really talented kid. If for those who are Big Ten fans like me, if you can remember the Big Ten championship game 2 years ago, it was Ohio State and Northwestern, and Ohio State should have won that game going away. They were that much better. It was a close game for 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden, Ohio State said, "Forget it. We're just giving the ball to Trey Sermon almost every single time we can," and he just ran roughshod all over Northwest. It was almost unfair at times. I mean, the kid's got talent, and I was actually told coming out of the draft that even though he only had about 46 receptions between Oklahoma State, or was it Oklahoma or Oklahoma State? Oklahoma. And Ohio State in his 4-year career, that they thought he could catch the ball. It just wasn't in the offense that he was in where they were doing that a whole lot, but they felt he had good hands too. But having said all that, as you just mentioned, the feedback I got was major red flag that the guy's a 3rd round pick in the doghouse from the start, can't beat out the 6th round pick. And then we didn't mention this. Then the 49ers this year used a 3rd round pick on another running back. Tyrion Price is his last name.
Ty Davis Price, yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that the 49ers moved off this guy that fast is a major red flag.
A couple things. The kid who beat him out was Jordan Mason, who was an undrafted free agent on Georgia Tech.
Right.
He was good from the very start. He also has good size. So here's what I was told about Sermon. Last summer he comes in. He's actually a really high character kid, good kid.
Mm-hmm.
But he kind of had this attitude that he thought or he knew he was going to be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't have the urgency that you need to have. As a rookie, you got to prove yourself.
Right.
He clearly didn't have it. And here's the thing. Mitchell was not really on the radar to start the camp. Now, he's a great zone runner. He's a one cut, perfect for the zone scheme, but he's also a 6th round pick, not a big frame like the other guys. Jeff Wilson had meniscus surgery. Jermichael Hasty's always hurt. So they had to play Sermon early on. In fact, he started the first game.
Mm-hmm.
And Mitchell was not ready yet, and then he would eventually take over the job. So he was certainly a disappointment. There's no sugarcoating it. He just didn't do anything for them. Now, it's only 1 season.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have a great training camp. He definitely was on the fringe, and they have 4 of the backs that they like. They also cut Jermichael Hasty, by the way, this year. But they got 4 backs that they're keeping, and they moved on from him. So, the other negative from him, and this is from the tape study from Ohio State, he was, for a guy around 230, way too finesse. Remember when Jordan Howard, from our Bear sources, they said they got really frustrated with him.
Mm-hmm.
That he would not use, other than being in not good enough shape, he would not use his size correctly, trying to be a lighter back when you're a heavier back. And that's something also that the Niners wanted him to get back to doing, using his size better, and he didn't do it. And we'll see. Now the Eagles run more gap than the Niners. Niners are almost all zone.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to see how he fits in. And it's not a lock that he's going to make it, but they'll give him time. And boy, do they need a back with size. This is, to me, entering training camp, a major need for them.
Mm-hmm.
Sanders can't be the power back. He cannot be what they call a 4-minute or closer. The 4-minute back, there's a 2-minute back. There's a 4-minute. There's a hurry up back when you're behind, or the last 2 minutes of the half. But the 4-minute back is when you have a lead in the 4th quarter. That guy's got to grind out carries, and they do not have anyone who could. Gainwell, despite being a really good goal line back, cannot do that. Scott, they don't believe it can do it. We'll see if it could be Sermon.
So 2 things on this that stick out to me. One, I can support the move because there's really no downside. I think the fact that you have Pirine there as a big back on the practice squad means if Sermon isn't getting it, gets in the doghouse for whatever reason, if it's not working out like it wasn't in San Francisco, well, then Pirine can come and give you those grind out yards that you need. He's not great, but I mean, he's a guy who can give you a couple of yards in 4-minute situations.
Yeah.
And the second point of that would be, I think that that's pretty indicative of the fact they don't trust Miles Sanders in those situations. They don't. No one has trust. Doug Peterson didn't trust Miles Sanders in those situations, and if you haven't had your fantasy football draft yet, and you're thinking about Miles Sanders as like maybe a sleeper because people are down on him. I would say he's sleeper for a reason there, and I just think that when you load up on backs like that, it's not a great sign for Miles Sanders.
Yeah, look, no doubt. And Sanders we'll get the injury report. The good thing he's starting to work, but yeah, that's pretty much it for running back. But they did what we thought they would do. We'll see if Sermon could work. It's really interesting. Yeah, it just that a team already gave up. Another team cutting a 3rd round pick. A lot of 3rd rounders were cut last week.
Definitely. By the way, I just looked it up. How many yards do you think Trey Sermon had in that Big Ten championship game against Northwestern that I was talking about?
It's definitely over 200.
Keep going.
300?
Yeah, over 300.
I thought it was. Yeah, I couldn't remember the exact number, but
331 yards on 29 carries. That's almost 10, that's more than 10 yards a carry. That's unbelievable. Gosh. They were losing, Adam. Ohio State was losing 10-6 at halftime. They won 22-10. I mean, it's very rare that you see one human being take over a college football game the way he took over that game. And they just kept feeding him and feeding him and feeding him.
Wait, did you say they were behind at halftime?
Yeah, they were losing at halftime. And then they ran to come back. That's how they came.
That was like the Titans-Seahawks overtime game last season when the Titans were down at halftime, maybe even by 10. For the life of me, I don't know why they were doing it, but they kept running with Henry. Maybe they just thought that he was missing a hole, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. He ran all over him, and they won in overtime. It was really crazy. I'm like, why aren't they throwing the football? But
listen, man, I was happy. I was halftime because I'm a hater, being a Penn State fan. And I'm like, wow, Northwestern's really going to do this. So I was glued into that game. And at some point in the fourth quarter, I didn't become like rooting for Ohio State, but when you see a phenomenon happening, you just want to keep. And they just kept giving him the ball, and he would just kind of knife through the Northwestern defense. It was like Drago versus Rocky there late. I mean, you could see it wearing down and wearing down and wearing down, and then finally it just went kaput.
Wow, Mike Zimmer would have loved that.
So would Pete Carroll.
yes, the run game truthers. Anyway.
All right, so we kind of talked about the fact that with Sermon added to the 53, Davion Taylor said goodbye. He got waived. Nobody fell in love with all that speed and athleticism that Jim Schwartz once fell in love with, and nobody claimed the contract, which wouldn't have been a very expensive contract because it's year 3 for him in a 4-year deal.
Yeah,
it wouldn't have been. You could have claimed that easily. It was not a lot of money.
Yeah. And there's no guaranteed money. You don't like him, you cut him.
Exactly.
Look, it's interesting. The only player that we'd have to ask, but I'm sure in fact, I know Jack Anderson would have gone back to the practice squad if the Giants didn't claim him.
Oh, sure.
That's one where they probably, I guess, because they're so deep in the offensive line, and we know that Driscoll could be a guard or a tackle, and Opeta's a guard, and Juergens is Kelsey's backup. So the kid Stills is going to play guard, not tackle, as we understand it. But they have fine depth. There's no argument over that. But Anderson's a guy that was really nice. Was a nice player that they signed off the Bills practice squad, and he's back with the O-line coach who coached him, Bobby Johnson in Buffalo, the GM.
Yep.
And the head coach who was the offense coordinator. So obviously Brandon Brown also,
sure,
who was here in Philly last season. So they all know him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they lost him. But yeah, Davion Taylor. The good thing is here that he's back is that there's no pressure on him. The Eagles I can't believe I'm saying this, and I'll probably regret saying this, but they're actually pretty deep at linebacker. Because you look at it, Kaiser White, Edwards, I know Reddick's a linebacker. Patrick Johnson's a linebacker. Kyron Johnson's a linebacker. N'Kobe Dean. And Bradley probably will not play a snap on defense unless he has to, unless someone gets hurt. But they have depth for the first time in how long, and they could just bring Davion Taylor along slowly.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Not to mention, I think that I would say the addition of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson allows them to be in even more dime scenarios than they would now. as compared to when they had Anthony Harris out there. And for New Orleans, he would come up and play sort of that, what they call the jack linebacker, which is like a safety playing a weak side type, a coverage linebacker role in a dime defense. So Malcolm Jenkins used to do that for the Eagles a couple of years ago too.
That was the Jim Schwartz created star position.
Star, right? Yeah,
yeah, that was very unique. He was it really was a linebacker.
Sure.
He played almost exclusively in the box near the line, knife in there. Yeah, boy, this Gardner Johnson kid, we talked about him last week, but I'm very interested to see how much he plays week one, because is he going to play every single snap, or are they going to just work him in because he's got to learn the defense?
Right.
This is a different defense than he played in New Orleans under Dennis Allen, so you just can't snap your fingers and expect him to get it. But that was the Ronald Darby deal, so to speak. That was one. Well, this one was much later,
right?
Darby deal, but nevertheless, this is going to be interesting to see how he plays early on.
So another interesting question we keep getting at him from an offensive standpoint is who's going to return punts now that Jalen Reagor has been traded. And you made the point that I can confirm and back up last week. Not that you need it, but I can. That Nick Sirianni was not necessarily like on the Jalen Reagor must go bandwagon. In fact, he was lobbying for Jalen to stay as a head coach he's not concerned with salary cap or value, right? He just wants the best players at positions. He would have loved to have Jalen Reagor be that fifth wide receiver / starting punt returner. But obviously Howie Roseman doesn't want to have a guy who's a first round pick and making that money and all the things around him when he has a decent enough offer. So he made the move. But it does raise the question, who then becomes the punt returner with the Eagles only having 4 wide receivers on the 53. Now, you mentioned Britton Covey as a pretty much lock to get elevated and take that role.
I would say, I mean, you never say never, because I just went through the roster and I went through some scenarios last week. And I'm like, it has to be Covey. Devin Allen's a kick returner only.
Quez was practicing, I believe.
I saw that.
Returns at times, yeah.
Kickoff return, boy, he looks like he's got a little something to kickoff return.
Yeah.
Gainwell can do it, Scott can do it, but quite frankly, Covey, one of the things that they wanted him to do, and he did a good job in practice, he just didn't get enough opportunity in the games, was to return punts.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, now the only thing is, now you have to understand, every player from the practice squad only gets 3 elevations.
Right.
We're going to talk more about the new rules and the adjustments, man. It is unbelievable how many the competition committee, and by the way, I love them. It's a shame it took COVID for them to get it right with these rules.
Mm-hmm.
And the GMs are loving this, but in terms of the adjustments, because you could really, and we're up to 16 players now on the practice squad. So yeah, Covey to me is kind of what they were hoping. His hands are really good. He's got great short area quickness. What he's going to do is he's going to be aggressive. Like Greg Ward, good hands, but he was a fair catch guy. He rarely returned it.
Right.
Covey is going to return it, and he's got a chance to get you 8 to. What we are told as special teams coaches will tell you over the years, man, if you could get me 8 to 10 yards, I'm so happy. If you can get me 8 to 10 yards, I'm like, okay, well, that's it. So if that's what Covey can do, great. So they have till Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern to do that for that Sunday game at 1 o'clock at Detroit, and that's pretty much, yeah, that to me would be that's certainly one of the decisions they have to make.
Yeah, I know, speaking with one person, that they had wished that there would have been a little bit more opportunities in the preseason games for Covey to do more punt returns. But then again, that's why we talk about the importance of joint practices, because you may not get a bunch of scenarios, like especially in that last game when the Dolphins scored like on nearly every possession. So there wasn't a whole lot of punt returns going on in that game.
By the way, that may have been why he was not claimed, because there's not any dynamic tape out there on him.
Right.
It all came in practice. The good stuff, you would really, literally, as explained to me, if you're media going to these practices, you would actually have to study him every practice to know how well he did.
Right.
If you weren't studying him, we saw him in OTAs. We were like, wow, okay, let's see if this is real. But he was fine in practice and training. In fact, actually pretty solid. It's just in the games, he didn't get much of an opportunity.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And of course, as you're mentioning, from a financial standpoint for the team, why sign him to the 53 right now and release a player when you don't have to? You can elevate him for up to 3 weeks or 3 times, I should say,
Yep.
which I would imagine it would be week 1, week 2, week 3. And what are the odds that the Eagles go 3 weeks into the season, or any team, and doesn't have one injury that requires a guy going on IR for a little bit, and that naturally opens up a spot? It may just be the shorter, like, you're back in 3 weeks, but it usually naturally just opens up a spot where you can fill it then, instead of having to do it now you'd have to release a player now.
Right. And not only that, if he does well, because it'll be on tape, see the teams don't get access to the practice tape except for the Dolphins and the Browns. So in season, no one gets access to the practice tape other than the Eagles. So if he puts together good tape in the games, that, on your point, that's why it's better, because they just reverts to the practice squad. Whereas if you sign him off the practice squad, you have to waive him to get back to the practice squad. That's the difference.
Right. Exactly. All right. So, any other candidates you think for punt return, or
no? Scott and Gainwell can do it. Gainwell's more of a kickoff returner.
Gotcha.
Scott could do it, but
yeah,
they don't have a lot of good choices. Their return game's got to be better. That's where Rager really, that was the area where, the very least, you thought he could be a good returner. He'd catch it, but it was the lack of instincts. In college, he was so instinctive as a punt returner. That final year at TCU in 2019, his tape was so dynamic as a returner. I don't know what happened here. I just don't understand what happened to him. Now, what do you think happens with him in Minnesota?
So I was told, Adam, that he's going to be their number 1 punt returner. Now, it may not be by week 1. They've obviously just got him into camp.
Yeah.
In fact, I was actually told he had a really nice first 1 or 2 practices, and the coach was really impressed that he caught everything. He was determined. So he's off to a good start as far as practice is there. So we'll see if he can be the starting punt returner for, Sunday. I forget who they open up. It's a big game. Is it Green Bay that Minnesota opens up against?
I
think it is.
That is week numero 1. The Vikings are hosting the Packers at 4:25.
Yeah. Well, we've already seen him return a punt against the Packers, if I'm not mistaken, right? So for a touchdown. So yeah. So, but again, I don't know if he'll be the number 1 punt returner by week 1. I think they hope for him to be, but they'll just have to make sure he gets enough work in. And then it'll be interesting as far as I understand. There's a chance that Adam Thielen can move around a little bit, maybe into the slot now, and who knows what that.
He's always been in the slot.
Yeah, who knows what it's going to look like in 2023 and beyond. He's getting a little older too.
He is.
And they lost BC Johnson to an ACL injury, so he's going to be out for a while. So there'll be some opportunity to get Jalen Reagor on the field quite a bit, as long as he can acclimate into the offense. And Adam, one thing is interesting. I was told that the Rams, because Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings coach, was with the Rams last year, when they lost Robert Woods to the ACL injury, I was told that they considered calling the Eagles. They did. They called the Eagles just to check into, the situation with Jalen Reagor. But obviously, Howie wasn't making moves at that point with him or Dillard, right? You had reported that teams were calling on Dillard, but Howie was not in a trading mindset at that point. Yeah, that's the same feedback I got on Reagor, is that Howie wasn't really listening.
Well, their last year, they didn't have AJ Brown.
Right.
They were still hopeful that Reagor could, although he had a nice offseason and training camp, he's fine, no issues, but he wasn't going to surpass Brown, Smith, or Watkins, or Pascal for that matter.
Right.
So moving on here, yeah, it is interesting. I understand they have till Saturday to add another receiver, but you can't go into a game with just 4 receivers, because if one gets hurt, it becomes super difficult. You got to be careful with it. It's like kind of dressing 2 tight ends, because if you lose 1 tight end, you can't run 12 personnel because they don't use a fullback.
Right. Well, last interesting nugget. Jeff Stoutland, offensive line coach, was someone who liked Jalen Reagor and didn't want to see him go. And I guess he had spoke up about it, just said he felt like, it'd be great to have Jalen Reagor be on the team. But it didn't happen. So, I just think it's fascinating that the offensive line coach, but that's kind of a testament to Stout, that he's not, he doesn't just see the world through offensive line. This is why I think he could probably be if he wanted to be a good head coach someday, because he can
Oh,
connect
yeah.
with people all across the locker room.
Beloved. I do wonder if Rager had been a good punt returner, what if they made this trade? Let's say he was close to what he was in college at TCU.
Yeah,
I do wonder because they don't have a fifth receiver.
right.
You and I know that Sirianni wanted him back because they didn't have a fifth, and who knows? And I know the Eagle fans will say if Rager becomes a player, figures he doesn't become a player with the Eagles, but he becomes a player somewhere else. It's just their luck, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing. It's six out like a sore thumb. You don't have a fifth receiver on the roster. It's just weird. But I mean, we'd have to look at the 31 other rosters. I don't know if there's another team that is doing that, but they do have on their practice squad now. They do have Deon Cain, who had a nice camp, who pushed for a spot, and Covey. Only two receivers though. Interesting.
No, Allen also, Devin Allen.
Right now, the question would be though. I know he had the great touchdown, but they seem really as a special teams returner.
Right.
You do wonder that now that he's on the practice squad, can they develop him? It's been so long. It's been 6 years. Is there anything there as a receiver? Because he did it against third stringers against Cleveland, running a straight line. He's also good. He's good on special teams coverage.
Yeah.
It's not going to keep him on the roster. You do wonder if he could he develop at least as a kick returner? They've got all season to do it. This is something we're going to track.
Yeah, I'd be a little reluctant to do it week one, but maybe
no, not week one, but,
okay.
Over time, over next 6 to 8 weeks, can he? Because their special teams returns are terrible.
Yeah,
like it is.
But I'm scarred for life from having to see Greg Lewis, who was a very good backup wide receiver, be forced into punt return action in the season opener against the Packers in, I want to say 2006, 7. I forget what year it was.
Question: was that when they moved Dan Klecko from wherever to fullback?
It might have been.
And Dan and I worked for the Eagles, 10 years ago or something, and I know Dan a little bit. He tells that story. It's been so long. We got to get. He's another guy we got to get on ITV TV. He's phenomenal.
He is great.
Love Dan and his dad Joe, Temple guy. But
I think it was the 2007 season. The Eagles go up to Green Bay and lose 16-13, and they only kept 5. Jason Avant was talking about this when we did our show last week. They had only had 4 receivers on the 53 man, and they asked Greg Lewis to return punts, and I think he muffed one and fumbled another that turned into a touchdown, and they wound up losing by 3 points. I mean, it's
Andy.
It was a disaster. It was a total disaster. And Greg Lewis, I gotta say that Greg Lewis, who I have never been a big fan of as a just as a person, to be honest with you.
Okay.
His teammates love him. I did not enjoy.
I got it.
But I will still defend him to the bone. Right. I don't think he should have been fired years ago. But either way, but he faced the cameras and took all the accountability for muffing those punts. But it was not the number one job of a coach is to put a player in position to succeed. Greg Lewis was not a punt returner.
Of all people,
Green Bay is not an easy place to just go and punt return. You're on the road, hostile. Brett Favre was on the other sideline. That was a bad job by Andy on that one.
Andy, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame when he retires. He's one of the best coaches in NFL history. He's got his Super Bowl. Probably will get more with Mahomes. But Andy inexplicably would do things. Every couple of years, you go, okay, the Juan Castillo move. Everybody knows that was a bomb. That was a dilemma. That was just dumb. I remember Andy was trying to figure it out, and his dilemma was, okay, Juan hadn't done it since college at Texas A&I, and then he wanted to do right by his coach, and then it was just an absolute stupid mistake. I don't know, man. Coaches get in their way sometimes, where we all know that was not going to work. And we'll see. But this thing, getting back to this year's Eagles team, they got to get the returns right. They just got to, come on, just be better than average.
Yes, just be better than average. That would be nice. All right, so that's it for the Jalen Reagor trade. We'll move on a little bit. First, we want to tell everybody to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com, enhancing the fans' experience and with all their coverage of Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fan. That is their motto, so make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation. We'll pause real quick for another word from our great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. And if you hop out there to Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal. All right. Speaking of a good deal, Eagles are getting some players back, Adam. I know Jason Kelsey was back at practice last week.
Yep,
and, as you reported quite a while ago, he's on track to play week 1. Shouldn't be any issues.
Yep, he'll play. Yep, no doubt. And Sanders,
with
his hamstring worked. Barring a setback, he should be ready to go. Kelsey's a lock. It's just Sanders should play, but man, with this guy with the hamstring injuries, geez, they got a lot. They have no shortage of running backs. So if he had a setback, they'll be fine.
Yes.
But just the only two that I would be concerned about are Josiah Scott with his hamstring strain and Josh Jobe with the elbow injury, when the contraption. So we need to learn a little bit more later this week. Their first injury report comes out after Wednesday's practice. Today's practice is short. Tomorrow they have a day off. You know what's interesting? The Giants, I don't know. They're the only team I've seen doing this. They're working their play, and it might be for sports science. They're working their players to Tuesday, and they're having a day off on Friday. I think this is the old.
Wait, that's Chip Kelly-ish, isn't it?
Yes,
Chip Kelly used to do that. Wow.
And Tom Coughlin did it too. So they must have the same sports science group.
Wait, Tom Coughlin did that? That's shocking.
Yeah.
He's not exactly the modern
on,
NFL coach.
I had a friend on a coach I know pretty well was on Coughlin's staff, and they did that. They did the old sports science. Have the walkthrough on Friday, I think, and practice Saturday.
So wait, are they? So if you're the Giants,
this Friday,
will the Giants get Monday off though? Will they get even?
No, they're working. They're working Monday, Tuesday. I think they either walk through or off on Friday. I don't have it in front of me, but I was kind of like, what the heck?
That's interesting.
Yeah, why are they? But it's the first week though. Usually you get back to your normal in-season schedule. So,
so are they only doing it the Giants for week 1?
Yeah, I don't know yet. I just saw their practice schedule.
Right, because that could make sense because you're not sore from a Sunday game. So I could see why you would have more practice Monday, Tuesday, and then just take Friday off to be fresher. But I would be. I never understood it from Chip when he was doing it after week 1. Like I thought that was just a little too much.
Because you remember Andy had the infamous, I call, because I hated it, 10-10-10.
Yes.
Practice. It's so annoying. It's like less than an hour and you run through these scripted plays.
Yeah.
And it's so short and it's just, you don't really learn much. This is when they used to let us in to watch. This was before Andy shut us all down.
Right.
Andy's one of the last guys. It was John Fox when he was with Carolina and Andy in Philly. The two head coaches let you watch everything, but you couldn't report anything.
Right.
And of course, it was it was violated. Some of the reporters, one in particular. Yeah, get into that one. That one bothered me. I love going to practice, man. I mean, they used to tease me the Friday practice.
Yeah.
Either Trotter or B Doc said, "Why are you here?" I'm like, "Cause I like watching practice, man. I don't,
But there wasn't really much to watch on those Fridays.
I know right. It was like an hour. But
fast forward all these years, and a 10-10-10 would be like the second most grueling practice you would see.
Right. You know what?
They do now.
Well, Doug did it and Andy did it. So I wonder if any of Andy spawned any of the did Matt Nagy's back with him now. Did he do it in Chicago? I don't know, but
good question.
Anyway, so we'll keep an eye on Scott, who's a backup corner safety.
So wait, if Scott can't play, I just want to look at the corner safety.
They have 6 corners.
I was going to say they see. You're going to have Slay, Maddox, Bradbury, and McPherson.
Yep.
So McPherson would be the top outside. If they had an injury to Maddox, I think that would be difficult there because I'm not sure. You might be able to play Bradbury in the slot and put McPherson.
Gardner Johnson.
Yeah. But then you would, if you moved Gardner to the slot, Gardner Johnson, and had, I don't know if you'd probably still bring in McPherson. You'd probably just go with a dime look.
Well,
or 6, man, that's a tough
one. Let's just say, for instance, if Maddox couldn't play, he needs a breather in the game. Now, this is assuming Gardner Johnson's ready for normal snaps. Gardner Johnson could take his spot. They can move Blankenship in his spot. I would have to think Blankenship's ahead of Wallace. Wallace is just, he's a force safety. fact, as you said earlier,
I think
mean,
you're in a really bad spot if you have to put either of them on the field, though.
I
As
know,
much as
I
good of a
know.
training camp Blankenship had, he's still a rookie free agent who,
Yeah, sure. Look,
he'd get exposed right off the bat.
he's limited athletic. He's smart. He's tough,
Right.
and he definitely earned a spot. But he's just, you're absolutely right. The major drop off. See, this is the thing about this team. Their starting 22 is terrific. There's no doubt. Their roster overall is the best it's been in years.
Mm-hmm.
But they got problematic third corner.
Yeah.
Pearson is inexperienced. He's never put up really good tape. He's just okay. Josiah Scott's been a nice story, but he got hurt and he moved to mostly safety anyway. Josh Joe was a nice story. He had a good camp, but he's now hurt. He's also an undrafted rookie. Now he had enough good tape in college to be drafted, but he had some injuries he had to deal with in prior to the draft. So, yeah, they got some questions now with depth in the secondary, no doubt.
Yeah, and that's really kind of sort of the only thing that would scare me, because I keep going back to the 2018 team that I thought was extraordinarily deep, extraordinarily talented, but there was a period there where they were down both starting corners, right? And isn't that, you remember they lost 48-7 to the Saints, and they were 4-6 at the time, and they were starting guys like Josh Hawkins and I think DeAndre Bembry or something like that.
You keep saying DeAndre Bembry. It's not. It's
that's not. I know. Who is it? DeAndre. Who was it?
I'll look it up. I can't think of the kid's name right now. In 2018, it was at corner.
Yeah,
it was Sidney Jones who got exposed. Remember, Peter King actually wrote about it.
Right.
It was in 18. It was Mills, Rasul Douglas.
Wasn't there a Josh Hawkins in there?
Well, Hawkins, who's been with Green Bay, he's been with I saw his name in the preseason.
All right, I got the name. Right. It's Devontae Bosby. That's the guy.
Devontae Bosby.
Devontae Bosby, Chandon Sullivan, and Cravon LeBlanc all played significant snaps in that loss. That was a 48-6 loss.
And all you would see is the back of their jerseys running downfield because they were getting burned. I remember that like it was yesterday. It's bad.
But you could see how too many injuries at one position can take a really good team and just completely crush it. So, and again, this is in the past. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. I'm just saying, it just sort of reminds you of how good you can be, but how just one or two, maybe three injuries at a spot can really reduce. And again, receiver for them that year got hurt too, because they lost, what's his name? Mike Wallace.
Yep.
That was the year they lost him by week 1 or week 2.
Got hurt at the Bucks. Yeah.
Right. They had traded Torrey Smith, if I remember, to the Panthers. They replaced him by signing Mike Wallace. Wallace got hurt. Alshon, I think, missed the first few weeks because he was still coming back from the shoulder surgery. Am I correct with that?
In 18, yes. Remember, he debuted against the Titans.
Right.
Yeah.
So here you are without Mike Wallace, without Alshon Jeffrey. I mean, you've got Zach Ertz catching like 300 passes a game. Nelson Aguilar was in his last year. He was dropping everything that was thrown to him against the Falcons. And was that game? Yeah.
That was our first year. You know how I remember that was a Sunday night game, right?
Yeah.
And I was at your house. We were taping something, and Aguilar dropped I just remember like being in shock. That was the overtime game, right?
I believe so. It was either that year or the next.
Either way,
but I know he was on that team.
Great pass from Wentz, I'm assuming, and it was right in his hands and he dropped it.
Yeah. So, injuries at one spot, too many can really kill you. So, but otherwise, the roster is very very.
Oh, they're super deep in the OL. They're actually deep. Well, I say deep at receiver. They're 4 all are going to play. They're all going to have a role.
Mm-hmm.
It's just when you look at it, you worry about certain positions that are important. Third outside corner is important. And when you spread them out, when you're playing 11 against them, or you're actually you could, not that a lot of teams play 10 personnel, but some teams will run 4 wide, but every team runs 3, some 3.
Yep.
Some 11 personnel. So we'll have to see what happens, but this is a good roster. We'll talk more Wednesday. We'll see what their first injury report, by the way, for Friday's show. We'll have Wednesdays and Thursdays practices, and we'll just see who they list. And also for Detroit, see who they list. Jameson Williams isn't playing, but they have a interesting roster that the Lions do.
They definitely do. I can't wait to preview it. I can't wait to be back in regular season form as we are right now. Like you said, Wednesday we'll get into any remaining Eagle stuff. We'll also go take a look at all the teams you saw in training camp this summer and go through some nuggets there. That'll be fascinating. And of course, Friday morning, previewing Eagles, Lions, and ahead of Sunday's pregame show with some major announcements on the way. So looking forward to it all. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Tyler Strasser, doing a great job. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.